The Jonestown Massacre. The story of the Jonestown Massacre is a tragic and horrifying event that took place on November 18, 1978, in the remote settlement of Jonestown, Guyana. It was orchestrated by Jim Jones, the charismatic leader of the People's Temple cult, and resulted in the deaths of more than 900 people, including children and infants. Jim Jones founded the People's Temple in the 1950s in Indianapolis, Indiana. He advocated for racial equality, social justice, and communal living, attracting a diverse group of followers. However, over time, Jones became increasingly paranoid and controlling. In the 1970s, Jones relocated the People's Temple to California, where the cult continued to attract new members. It became a tightly controlled community, with Jones exerting complete control over every aspect of his followers' lives. He manipulated his followers through mind control techniques, employing a combination of psychological and physical abuse to maintain his hold over them. As scrutiny and criticism mounted against the People's Temple, Jones decided to establish a utopian community in Guyana, which he called Jonestown. He portrayed it as a sanctuary from the corrupt outside world, promising a socialist paradise where his followers could live in peace and harmony. Hundreds of followers, including families with children, moved to Jonestown in Guyana to live under Jones's rule. However, conditions in the settlement were far from ideal. Isolated in the dense jungle, the inhabitants faced harsh living conditions, including overcrowding, malnutrition, and forced labor. Jones's control over the community became increasingly totalitarian, and his mental state deteriorated. As the cult grew, concerns about the People's Temple began to emerge. Reports of physical abuse, psychological manipulation, and financial fraud reached the media and concerned relatives of cult members. Journalists and defectors started to investigate the organization, uncovering disturbing practices and signs of a cult gone astray. In November 1978, U.S. Congressman Leo Ryan traveled to Guyana to investigate allegations of abuse within the People's Temple. Accompanied by a delegation that included media personnel and concerned relatives of cult members, Ryan arrived in Guyana and visited Jonestown. Initially, the visit seemed to go well, and Ryan and his delegation were shown around the settlement. On November 18th, as Ryan and his delegation prepared to leave, a group of Jonestown residents approached them, expressing their desire to escape. Fearing for their lives, they pleaded with Ryan for assistance in leaving the cult. Ryan agreed to help them and allowed them to board a plane back to the United States. That evening, as the delegation was about to depart from a nearby airstrip, they were ambushed by temple members who opened fire under Jones's orders, killing Ryan, 3 journalists, and 1 defector while injuring several others. Back at Jonestown, Jim Jones had already initiated his plan for a mass suicide. He gathered his followers in the main pavilion and coerced them into drinking a cocktail laced with cyanide, mixed with fruit punch and tranquilizers. Parents were instructed to give the poison to their children before consuming it themselves. Armed guards patrolled the area, ensuring compliance and preventing any potential escape attempts. The gruesome scene that followed was one of unimaginable horror. People convulsed, screamed, and died in agony. Many did not willingly drink the poison, as some were injected or forcefully forced to ingest it. Only a few individuals managed to survive by hiding or escaping into the jungle. The exact number of casualties remains uncertain, but it is believed that more than 900 individuals lost their lives, including 304 children. In the aftermath of the massacre, efforts were made to identify and repatriate the remains of the victims. Jonestown was eventually abandoned, and the site now serves as a memorial to the victims. The tragic events of that day continue to serve as a reminder of the importance of critical thinking, individual agency, and the need for vigilance against charismatic leaders who abuse their power. The Jonestown Massacre shocked the world and became an enduring symbol of the dangers of cult manipulation and the tragic consequences of unchecked power. It prompted extensive investigations into the People's Temple and sparked public discourse on the role of religious and social movements in society. The phrase, "drinking the Kool-Aid," entered popular culture as a reference to blind obedience or unquestioning belief. The events at Jonestown resulted in the largest single loss of American civilian lives in a deliberate act until the September 11th attacks in 2001. The tragedy sent shockwaves around the world and raised questions about cults, brainwashing, and the need for oversight and protection of vulnerable individuals.